Good afternoon again, and what we're doing now is we're going to etch this tester we did. The reason I had this, obviously my daughter's drawing of the seven dwarfs, but the reason I had this on top is because, as I said yesterday, after producing these marks, the plan was to etch it 10 minutes later, but obviously having two young children, plans sometimes don't work like that. So I had to cover the Mokulito plate with a piece of paper to prevent any grease from the residual atmosphere settling onto the surface and actually creating a mark. So if you do get in that situation where you've made all your marks on your wooden plate and then for whatever reason you have to go and do something else, before you etch it and stabilise the marks on the wooden plate, please just pop a piece of paper over it so that it is protected from the surface atmosphere. I haven't added any more. This is as we got to yesterday. What we need to do now is use gum arabic, which is this stuff here. It's liquidy, brown. It's actually a natural product from the pine tree. You can get two varieties of gum arabic. You can get a synthetic or a natural one. I always use the natural one, just mainly on principle of, well, you know, it is a natural product. And also I just find it etches better. You can buy it in small quantities or you can buy a large quantity if you're doing a lot of lithography. It is absolutely essential for this process. So you cannot do this or you cannot replace that gum. That is essential. It's gum arabic. Most stockists will use it because you also use it in watercolour, I believe, and other various fine art uses. Now, if you do use gum arabic and you have a large quantity, I tend to just store a smaller quantity in a jam jar so it's more accessible. Before we put the gum arabic on the wooden plate, we also need to use some of this. This is just talcum powder, or if you have some French chalk around, you can use the same. The principle is to stop these really heavy marks, for instance in the really waxy, greasy crayon, from smudging, because gum arabic is a water-based product and it might smudge some of these marks. So we use the French chalk to stop all that smudging. The gum arabic is in essence etching or stabilising the marks we have made into the very top layers of the wooden lithography plate so that you are able to create an addition from it and the marks do hold. You will also need, this is where a sponge comes into use. This is one I used before, and this is, you can see I've labelled it gum. This is my gum sponge. I use it for nothing else but gum arabic, and it's really important that the gum arabic sponge is separate from anything else. It's not used for washing up, for applying oil-based ink. It is a separate gum sponge, hence why I label mine. This sponge here is actually one of these amazing pop-up sponges that when you put into water, and this is always amazing, it just pops up. Look at that. It's absolutely brilliant. Look at it. And it's a really nice shape for holding it in lithography. You can use other household sponge or anything or similar, but these ones tend to be quite a nice shape. I find it mesmerising watching every time. That's actually not the one I'm going to use, so I'm now going to let that one dry out. That was just to show you the pop-up effect. And I'm going to reignite my gum sponge. Once I've finished my gum sponge, I just rinsed out in fresh water and let it dry. And that way I can reuse it without the, you know, it's not going to go mouldy or anything. So I'm just making sure it's nice and well soaked. This is just tap water. If you're getting into purist lithography, you know, you use deionized water and all this. But this is, as I've mentioned before, wooden lithography. It's already a bit different from the sort of very fine end of litho, so just tap water is fine. Now, I have my gum arabic ready and waiting. Just going to apply a very fine dusting of talc or French chalk if you have it. If you do have talcum powder, which is what I have access to at the moment, please use the unperfumed one. This is just a very soft piece of fleece. Happens to actually be an old reusable nappy liner. It's obviously been washed, but it's incredibly soft and fleece-like, so it doesn't scratch any of the surface. And I'm literally just giving it a very fine dusting. You'll see on the camera It's just gone a bit matte and the black's been knocked back, so I know it's got a nice fine dusting. Next, make sure your gum sponge is ready. Just kind of needs to be squeezed out of excess water so it's just nice and damp. The reason we're using it damp is because if it's a bone dry sponge and you're trying to spread gum around, it will just scratch and not really spread it around. The gum is water based, so if you do use a nice damp sponge, it makes it easier to spread evenly around. Now the trick with the gum is to try and put it on an area that doesn't have too many marks and then spread from there. Now I can see there's a bit in the middle there. So a nice blob, and just spread over. And I'm going to do half so you can see the difference with the gum on. You can see it's gone yellowy, so and this area hasn't been gummed up. So you can see the difference already. Wooden lithography tends to need quite a nice thick layer of gum to give a decent etch, I've found. And again, this is just through my own experience and trials. I'm sure other Mokulito artists will think differently. And please have a rummage around the internet for other videos and things and find something that works for you. And I've just made sure all the edges are covered. Just going to check in the light. It gets absorbed very quickly into the wood. And that, just going to pop that in the way. That is that. Nicely covered, nice even layer of gum. That now needs to sit and dry for a few days to etch and stabilise those marks. So that's exactly what I'm going to do before the next video. Once the gum is dried, I'm actually going to then cover this lightly with a piece of tissue paper, pop it away in a drawer so nothing damages it, and just literally leave it. Don't touch it, don't do anything. Leave it for a few days. And then the next video, I will show you how we ink this up and print it, which is very exciting. So if you're doing this at home, etch it, gum it, and that is that. And until next time, where we shall meet again with the inking. Thank you for listening.